rock solid. That wasn't right. Hey, Rock Solid Rig here. I'm Providence, and today we're going to be working on an installation that we have been looking forward to for quite some time. We are working on putting the Poison Spyder fenders and the Highline fender liners in. We're going to be taking off our old fenders. So these are going to be ripped off. These are plastic. We are planning on putting something a little bit more solid on there. So today is really going to be more about just that prep work that's going to go into it. So our plan is to get the Highline inserts painted. We're going to paint these orange, and then we're going to rip off the old fenders, and we are going to get started on prepping the Jeep for the installation for this. So stay tuned.
We got one, we got two, I believe three, and I also got to take this one off, I think. Bolt.
Is it just clipped on there?
Missed a bolt.
Uh-oh.
Josh here. So this is day two, trying to get the fender liners put on here. Getting those to work with the actual fender flare itself has proven to be much more difficult than we thought. Most of day one was spent just trying to figure out exactly how to go about getting the bolts into the holes and get everything lined up properly, be able to drill where we needed to drill. Wasn't really able to figure out exactly how to get the fender liner put in. We're going to be doing the second fender today. I'm going to get the flare on. It's not going to be that hard. It's really not that difficult. I do need to go and pick up a new drill bit. The 1/8 inch bit that I have is absolutely shot, but that was just from use from previously before I ever even started this job. So this should go pretty quickly, and then I'm just going to do some troubleshooting, figure out how to get these fender liners to actually work with these fender flares. I've seen pictures. I know that it's possible. I know people have done it before. I just haven't been able to talk to those people to find out exactly what they did. Once we get done there, then we're going to be moving on to the rears. Those shouldn't be too much of a problem. There are some nut certs that we have to do to be able to put those on, but we aren't putting fender liners back in these. It's literally just going to be the fender flare itself that's going to go on there. So got a pretty busy day. This afternoon we do have some plans. We're going to be headed out to the state fair, so I want to try to get this knocked out as quick as possible. But it is a beautiful day. We got nice weather. It's not supposed to be too horribly hot today, so hopefully it's not going to be bad. So you want to make sure that the threaded portion goes to the inside, because the bolts are going to be going through the fender itself and then into the brace, and then the bolt will catch on the back side. So now we're going to take the subframe bracket, and it's going to go slide right in here. It can be kind of difficult to get in. Alright, those have to come up. And we're going to reuse the hardware from whenever we took off the fender and the fender liner. So whenever you take these off, you do have to make sure and retain these, because the 3 bolts that we have here are going to be going into the underside of the subframe bracket that we just popped in, and they'll be going back in those same holes where we took them out of originally. Alright, it's a good idea to go ahead and test fit these bolts once you get this sub bracket into place, to make sure that they're going to go in. Okay, first one's good. First one's in place. I just basically want to make sure that they're all going to line up and go into place, because I'm about to put the fender itself on, and I just want to make sure that these bolts aren't going to give me too many issues being able to get into place. Now these 3 here, as well as 2 others that are going to be going on after we drill some holes, they are the 5/16 18 1-inch bolts. There are 5 of those that are going to go into the subframe. So 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5 once we drill our holes. Once we get the fender up there, I'll show you the other holes that we're going to have to drill. Those are going to take the 5/16 18 3/4 inch long bolts, and those will be backed by a washer and a nut, but I'll get those put on there, show you what those are whenever we actually get the fender up here onto the Jeep and we go ahead and get marked and ready to drill some holes. Alright, we're just gonna finish putting in these bolts here. Basically what I'm doing now, I'm gonna get the fender snugged up against the body, and then we'll be able to go through and mark the holes that we have to drill out. So we should have, as I mentioned earlier, 2 holes here, and these are going to be the 1-inch bolts that have to go into the subframe bracket that we put in. And then as you come down, we've got 1 that's going to have to go onto the seam here, 1 right next to it. We've got 2 down here, and then we should have 1 down at the bottom as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7 holes that we have to drill out in order to be able to completely bolt the fender up. So what I'm doing now, like I said, just going through, I'm going to snug up, tighten up everything that I can, get the fender up against the body, be able to get it exactly where it's supposed to be. We're going to check and look and make sure that the gap across the fender line is basically the same. Just get it in the position that we want it, get it tightened down, and then be able to drill those holes.
The other side didn't seem nearly as difficult as this one. Our neighbor is watching us. It doesn't need to be tied down all the way? No, okay. Alright.
Alright, so we've got everything snugged up. Now I'm just going to go through with my handy dandy little marker, and I'm going to mark the holes where we're going to drill.
It's kind of hard at such a weird angle to get it perfect. I'm really just trying to get a good idea of where the center is so that I can be able to use my punch and mark out the center so that I don't get everything too far off. I want them to be perfect, obviously, but that's not really gonna happen. So we'll get as close as we can and hope everything lines up.
So once you've marked all the spots that you need to drill, you're unfortunately going to have to now remove the fender that you just put on there so that you can drill the holes that you marked previously. So this project, unfortunately and fortunately, is a lot of taking off, putting back on, taking off, and putting back on. And I say fortunately because then you get a feel for where your bolts are going to be, how to put them in, the best way to screw them down, that sort of a thing. But unfortunately, you have to take them off. And we've seen a few people that have installed these and they did them by themselves. And I give those people major props because putting these on together as a couple has been pretty tedious. And there's two of us. So we're going to go ahead and take these off and we're going to drill the spots that we need to, and then we're going to put them back on and show you guys what to do next.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the center of these areas that I marked. This one is the difficult one because it is right on that ridge. And that's the one that seems like some people have said they've drilled through on the instructions. They actually have a huge cutout there where they looks like they just haphazardly drilled it and didn't really pay a whole lot of attention. So at least I know if I bust through, they've done the same thing.
And on the other side, we were able to drill through this and not bust this seam. So we're going to try the same tactic that we did on the other side and hope that it works so that way there's a nice round hole and not a busted seam.
And by tactic, you mean just get really lucky and have absolutely no idea what I did, but for some reason didn't bust through and the fender still went on fine. So, yeah, great tactic. Luck.
You know, if you just go nice and slow with this spot, you should be able to get it no problem. That's what you did on the other side, so.
Yeah.
So before you start drilling, because we almost made this mistake, whoops, make sure you take this off. Because if not, you're going to drill right into it, and that's going to be a big problem. So, yeah, make sure you guys take this off before you start the drilling process.
so now I've got the rear subframe bracket put on. These aren't the bolts that are going to go into it at the end, but these are at least flat so that I can get it tightened up to where I need it to be. But the bracket, it will only line up with 2 of the holes that you have drilled here, so there's only 1 spot that it can go to. Basically what we're doing, we want to put this bracket in so that we can mark these back holes here and then be able to drill those. Once they're marked, then we'll have to remove the subframe bracket, go through the holes that we've got drilled in the front here to be able to drill the 21/64 hole into the back. And then these 2 bolts that you see that I've installed on the front, those will actually be installed on the back, holding it to this inner frame piece or inner body piece here. And then the flathead cap screws will be going into these holes with a nut backing them up, but going through the fender flare itself.
So one of the things to note about these brackets is that there is a difference between the top and the bottom. There is one that is wider, we measured it, and there's one that's wider than the other one. So that's how we were able to differentiate between which side to put on the top and which one to put on the bottom.
And what you want is you want the wider portion at the bottom of the frame, as well as if you look at the bracket itself, the part that goes to the inside is completely curved. Whereas if you look at the piece that goes on the front, you'll notice that there's a small flat spot before it begins to curve inward. So that's just something that you want to make sure and pay attention to, because you do need to have that bracket oriented the correct way. Otherwise, if you put it to where it's too wide up top, then it's going to kind of throw this out of kilter here and get all cattywampus on you. We've got the subframe bracket removed and those holes have been marked. I also went ahead and punched those as well. I would prefer to be able to use an 1/8 inch bit like I did on these outer holes, to be able to pre-drill these inside holes and then follow it up with a 21/64. I don't have an 1/8 inch bit that's long enough, so we're just going to go ahead and hit them with a 21/64 and hope for the best. We got lucky on these 2 holes. The other side, we'll see how it goes. But this one, wish me luck. Alright, so now that we've got those holes drilled out, we're going to take the subframe bracket, I'm going to put it in here, and we are going to see if I manage to get these holes drilled where they need to be. Slide this in place. We want to be able to put all 4 bolts in, and I'm going to go ahead and throw some nuts on the back just to make sure that I don't have anything falling out here. Sure that I'm able to get them lined up fairly straight. I've got the other bolts in my hand, I'm an idiot. Alright, that one's in. That one's in.
Nice. Now the issue that we ran into on the other side, and the reason why we wanted to try and use the smaller drill bit first before we use the larger drill bit, is that the bottom hole, when we used the larger bit, actually ended up being off-centered, and so we had an issue with it.
Off, and we ended up drilling the hole a little bit too high.
Because when you go through this hole, it actually puts it at a strange angle, so you're not actually able to just drill straight through it like you're able to do it on this one. You have to do it at just the right angle. So if you are doing what we did, where you use the larger drill bit first, make sure that you have that aligned really well before you begin to actually do it, because that was a big issue we ran into. We had to go back and re-drill the whole entire thing.
Yeah, I wasn't able to really use the center punch on the other side nearly as well as I did over here. Just wasn't able to get it into the right position. I thought I had it in a good spot, but my hole ended up being just a little bit too high and a little bit too far to the right, so that whenever I went and drilled that hole, without having a pilot hole there, my bit walked just a little bit and ended up having to open that hole up on the other side. It shouldn't be an issue. I mean, the hole's obviously much larger than what the bolt is on that side now, but it's not so big that I wasn't able to get the washer and the nut on the back side of it, and it's still holding pretty steady. So one of the things that is very important, we didn't have this when we first started, but a 1/2 inch ratcheting wrench definitely comes in handy, because for the back side of these, not such a huge deal, but the bolt that you're going to have way down bottom here, really the only way that we were able to get it tightened up was to be able to have the ratcheting wrench. Without this, it was just too much of a hassle to be able to get a regular box wrench on and off of that nut, trying to get it tightened down and get it to where it was snugged up into place. Ratcheting wrench, definitely a yes. Pick it up if you don't already have it.
And you can adjust these using a Allen wrench, which is what we've been using to adjust them, or you can use anything that will fit inside the hole to make it move. It's really kind of your personal preference.
We just want to be able to get all the bolts started throughout the entire fender once we go to throw it up there, and then once all the bolts are started and everything is in place and you know nothing is cross-threaded, then we can go through and begin snugging everything down. Alright, so for the holes that we drilled, we do want to go ahead and kind of touch them up just a little bit with some paint, just so that we don't have any bare edges of that metal showing. Get up in there real good, get that covered. I'm just using silver spray paint that we have here around the house, just because it's not really going to be seen anyways. So I'm just needing to make sure that the holes are covered. And we're going to paint a happy little tree down here. I feel like Bob Ross right now. Alright, so what we're doing now is we're going through and we're just getting all of the bolts put into place. We don't want to tighten anything down. We don't want to really snug anything up at this point. We're going to have here and then 2 here that are going to be the 3/4 inch long bolts. And then the next 5 that go into place are going to be the ones that go into the subframe bracket that we have here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, these back 2 holes that we drilled here. Those are going to be the 5/16, 18, 1 inch long bolts. So you just want to make sure and put the 1 inch bolts in there, and then all of the other holes are going to get the 3/4 inch long. So I've got a few in place already, but I'm going to go through and I'm just going to finish getting these put into place. Like I said, I'm not going to snug anything down or make anything tight at this point. Once I get all of the bolts into place, then I'm going to go through and we'll start tightening stuff down. So we've got all the bolts started. If you look under here, everything is in place where it needs to be. Nothing is tightened down all the way. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to tighten down the bolts on the subframe brackets. The 3 10mm bolts that we have here, as well as the 2 5/16 bolts that are in the back there on the subframe brackets. Those are going to be the first ones that I get tightened up. And then we should be finished up after that. Alright, so we've got the fenders put on. We're all finished. I really like the way they turned out. Look really nice. It's kind of hard to see in the sun here, but you can see the subframe brackets inside there. All the bolts are tightened down. Like I said, we did run into some issues getting those fender liners installed. And Mjolnir is filthy, absolutely dirty. Hey Maggie. So we definitely got to get a detail done. There will be a part 2 to this video coming up. We obviously want to be able to get those fender liners put in there, because the fender liners, we very much need those in there. Keep everything off. I mean, you can see without having the fender liner on there, there's a whole lot of stuff exposed in there that we're not going to be wanting mud and gunk and just, you know, everyday road grime and crap getting up inside there. But you can see it fits up pretty well with the brawler rockers that are on there, so that looks great. You can see up here where the old fenders rode against the body here and scratched the heck out of it. I'm gonna have to get some anvil touch-up paint to be able to go over that and get that fixed up so that it's not as likely to rust. But I think the fenders turned out really great. Still have the rears to go. I'm gonna get started on those, so that'll be coming up soon.